He wasn't supposed to breathe again. The rain falls softly over the cemetery just outside Vancouver, a thin, cold drizzle that clings to black uniforms and polished boots, turning silence into something heavier, something that presses against the chest. The scent of wet earth and pine drifts through the air as a row of officers stands unmoving, their faces set in quiet discipline, while at the center, beneath a canopy of gray sky, rests a coffin draped in the Canadian flag, its red maple leaf darkened by rain, its edges sharp. Against the muted world around it, somewhere in the distance, a gull cries over the inlet, its voice swallowed quickly by the stillness, and for a moment, everything feels final, like the world has already decided how this story ends. But then the sound comes, low at first, almost mistaken for wind, a restless shift in the quiet, until it sharpens into something unmistakable, something alive, a bark. Coda stands at the foot of the coffin, a Doberman with a sleek black and rust coat now damp. With rain, muscles tense beneath his skin, ears forward, eyes locked on the box as if it holds more than memory. He doesn't whimper, doesn't pace, doesn't lower himself in grief the way dogs are expected to do. Instead, he barks again, louder this time, cutting through the ceremony like a fracture in glass. A few heads turn, subtle at first, then more noticeably, as whispers ripple through the gathered officers. "Keep him back." Someone murmurs, voice tight with discomfort, but the handler hesitates, fingers tightening on the leash as Coda pulls forward with a force that isn't panic, but purpose. The dog's claws scrape softly against the damp stone as he steps closer, nostrils flaring, breath visible in short bursts against the cool air, as though he's chasing something no one else can sense. The officiant pauses, words suspended between life and ritual, unsure whether to continue or wait. Rain taps steadily against the canopy, each drop marking time, each second stretching longer than it should. Coda lets out another bark, deeper now, edged with something that feels wrong for a funeral, not sorrow, not confusion, but warning. And somewhere beneath that flag, beneath layers of polished wood and folded silence, lies Officer Ethan Caldwell, declared dead just 36 hours earlier, his passing explained in clinical terms that left no room for doubt, no room for questions, no room for dogs who refused to accept it. The official report had been clear, efficient, final, like everything else in a system built on order, but Coda doesn't read reports, doesn't trust signatures or sealed conclusions. He trusts scent, breath, the subtle shifts of life that hide in places people stop looking. He moves closer still, ignoring the tightening leash, ignoring the quiet tension building around him, until he stands just inches from the coffin. Head tilted slightly, listening. For a moment, he goes completely still, the kind of stillness that belongs to something listening beyond sound, beyond what human ears can catch, and then, suddenly, his body stiffens, a low growl rising from deep in his chest, vibrating through the wood beneath his paws. It's not aggression, not fear, but recognition. Something inside is not finished. A gust of wind moves through the trees, carrying with it the scent of rain and cedar, and beneath it, something faint, something fragile, something that shouldn't be there. The handler swallows hard, glancing toward the senior officers, waiting for a command that doesn't come, because no one wants to be the first to question what has already been declared. The moment hangs, delicate and dangerous, like ice just beginning to crack, and Coda, soaked and unyielding, lifts his head and barks again, not in grief, but in defiance, as if the truth is still breathing, still waiting, just on the other side of the silence. No one moves at first, because in places like this, protocol is stronger than instinct, and silence is a kind of obedience that has been trained over years of standing in lines, following orders, trusting that the system knows what it is doing. But Coda does not step back, and that alone begins to unravel something invisible in the air. The handler, Constable Ryan Mercer, shifts his weight, rain dripping from the brim of his cap, eyes flicking from the dog to the coffin and then toward the commanding officers, searching for direction that still does not come. The growl deepens, low and steady, vibrating through Coda's chest like a warning that refuses to fade, and the leash strains again, not violently, but with a quiet insistence that feels more deliberate than any command. He has never done this before, Ryan says under his breath, more to himself than anyone else, his voice barely carrying beyond the sound of rain tapping against fabric and wood. A few officers exchange glances, subtle, cautious, the kind that carry questions no one is willing to speak out loud, because everything about this moment is beginning to feel wrong. not loud or chaotic, but wrong in a way that settles slowly into the bones. The officiant clears his throat, attempting to continue, but the words stumble, lose their weight, dissolve into the damp air before they can fully form. Coda steps forward again, closer now than any dog should be allowed during a ceremony like this, his nose nearly touching the polished surface, his breath fogging faintly against the wood, and then he stops, completely still, no bark, no growl, no movement, just listening, a silence so sharp it feels like it is cutting through the rain itself. Ryan feels it too, something shifting, something that does not belong to routine or order. And for the first time, doubt rises, small but undeniable. "Sir," he says, a little louder now, addressing Inspector Colin Fraser, who stands near the front with a posture carved from authority and years of command. Fraser does not respond immediately, his gaze fixed on the scene with a stillness that could be discipline or calculation. The pause stretches, long enough for discomfort to take root. Coda suddenly lifts his head and lets out a single, sharp bark that echoes across the cemetery, startling in its clarity, as if it is not just a sound but a demand, and then, without warning, he places one paw against the coffin and presses, not scratching, not clawing, but pressing, like he is trying to feel something beneath the surface. Ryan exhales slowly, his grip loosening just enough for the leash to slacken, because somewhere deep inside, a thought forms that he cannot ignore anymore. Ethan Caldwell had been declared gone too quickly, the report had been efficient, the explanation clean, but clean things sometimes hide what has not been fully understood. "Inspector," Ryan says again, steadier now, though his pulse has begun to rise, with respect, "something is not right." The words hang there, fragile, dangerous, because questioning a conclusion like this is not just unusual, it is almost unthinkable. A few officers shift uneasily, boots scraping softly against wet gravel, their composure beginning to crack in ways they cannot fully control. Fraser finally turns his head, slowly, his expression unreadable, eyes moving from Ryan to the dog, then to the coffin. For a moment, it seems as though he might dismiss it, reduce it to grief, to animal confusion, to anything that would restore order. But then Coda lets out another low sound, softer this time, almost like a plea, and presses his paw again, more firmly. And that is when something changes. Not loudly, not dramatically, but enough. Fraser takes a single step forward, the kind of step that shifts the weight of an entire moment, and the rain seems to quiet, as if even the sky is waiting. "Open it," he says, his voice calm, controlled, but carrying a weight that leaves no room for argument. The words settle over the gathered officers like a ripple through still water, and for a heartbeat, no one moves, because once the coffin is opened, there is no returning to certainty. Ryan swallows, nods once, and steps closer, his hands steady despite the tension in his chest, while Coda stands beside him, unmoving now, eyes fixed, as if he has been waiting for this exact moment all along. The sound of metal latches releasing is softer than anyone expects, a quiet click beneath the steady rhythm of rain, yet it echoes in every chest like something far louder. Ryan Mercer's hands move carefully, deliberately, as if the act itself demands respect beyond protocol, his fingers steady but his breath uneven, visible in the cold air as he lifts the first clasp, then the second, each motion stretching time into something fragile. Beside him, Coda does not move, does not bark, does not even breathe as heavily as before, his body held in a stillness that feels almost sacred, eyes locked on the narrow seam of the coffin lid. Around them, the officers stand frozen, their formation no longer rigid but uncertain, the clean lines of ceremony bending under the weight of what might come next. Inspector Fraser watches without speaking, his expression unreadable, though something in his posture has shifted, something less certain, less absolute. The final latch gives way, and for a moment, no one reaches for the lid, because this is the point where belief and reality can no longer coexist without consequence. Ryan exhales slowly, placing both hands against the edge, feeling the cool, damp surface beneath his palms, and then he lifts. The lid rises only a few centimeters at first, enough to let a thin line of dim light slip inside, enough to reveal nothing and everything at once. Coda steps closer, his nose lifting slightly, as if following something invisible, something that has been there all along. Ryan raises the lid further, the hinges whispering as they move, until the interior is revealed, quiet, still, unchanged at first glance. Officer Ethan Caldwell lies exactly as he had been prepared, uniform pressed, features calm, the kind of stillness that suggests closure, that tells a story everyone has already accepted, but then Coda lets out a soft, sharp exhale, not a bark, not a growl, but something in between, something that breaks the illusion. Ryan leans in slightly, his eyes narrowing, not in fear, but in focus, as if something just beyond clarity is beginning to take shape. For a heartbeat, there is nothing, and then, there it is, so faint it could be imagined, so subtle it almost disappears the moment it is noticed, a movement, not of the body, not of the limbs, but of something smaller, something quieter. Ethan's chest rises, just barely, a shallow motion that does not belong to the dead. Ryan freezes, his breath catching in his throat as his mind struggles to reconcile what his eyes are seeing. "Sir," he whispers, though the word feels too small for the moment. He is. But the sentence does not finish. Because it does not need to. Inspector Fraser steps forward now. Closer than before, his gaze sharpening, the distance between certainty and doubt collapsing with every step. He looks down, studies the still form, and then he sees it too, another faint rise, another fragile breath, like a thread refusing to break. The world tilts, not physically, but in the way truth shifts when it no longer fits the narrative that was given. "Call it in," Fraser says, his voice low but firm, no longer ceremonial. Now urgent, now real. The spell of silence breaks instantly. Radios crackling to life, voices overlapping, controlled but edged with disbelief. As the scene transforms from farewell to emergency, Ryan steps back, giving space, but his eyes remain fixed on Ethan, as if looking away might undo what has just been revealed. Coda, however, does not step back. He lowers his head slightly, his body relaxing for the first time since the ceremony began, not in relief, but in recognition, as if the truth has finally aligned with what he already knew. The rain continues to fall, unchanged, steady and indifferent, but everything beneath it has shifted. What was meant to be an ending has become something else entirely, something unfinished, something that was never meant to be buried. And as hands move quickly now, as voices sharpen and urgency replaces ritual, one quiet fact settles into the air with undeniable weight. Ethan Caldwell is not gone, and whatever tried to make it so has not yet finished its story. The siren does not start all at once. It builds, distant at first, then rising through the rain like something urgent breaking through a dream, and suddenly the cemetery is no longer a place of farewell but a place of movement, of voices, of hands working faster than thought. Paramedics kneel beside the open coffin, their uniforms already darkened by the drizzle, gloved hands moving with quiet precision as they check for signs that should not exist but now undeniably do. One of them leans in close, fingers at Ethan Caldwell's neck, eyes narrowing in focus, and then a single nod passes between them, small but electric, confirmation without words. "We have a pulse," the paramedic says, steady but firm, and the sentence lands heavier than any speech that came before it. Around them, officers shift, some stepping closer, others holding back as if unsure whether they are witnessing a miracle or a mistake that has not yet revealed its cost. Ryan Mercer stands just behind, breathing shallow, his gaze fixed on Ethan's face, searching for more movement, more proof, something that makes sense of what has just been uncovered. Coda remains at the edge, no longer pressing forward, no longer resisting, his body lowered slightly now, eyes softer but still locked on the man he never believed was gone. The stretcher arrives quickly, wheels rolling over damp gravel with a hollow sound, and the transition begins, careful, controlled, every motion measured to protect what little life remains. Ethan is lifted from the coffin with a kind of reverence that feels different now, not ceremonial, but protective, urgent, as though every second matters in ways no one had prepared for. The rain continues to fall, indifferent to the shift in meaning, tapping softly against fabric and metal, while the red maple leaf on the flag flutters slightly in the wind, no longer a symbol of finality, but of something interrupted. Inspector Fraser steps aside as the paramedics work, his jaw set, eyes sharp, watching everything with a focus that has replaced the earlier certainty. Something in his expression has hardened, not in resistance, but in realization. This was not a natural ending, this was something else. The ambulance doors open with a dull metallic echo, and the stretcher slides inside, followed by the controlled urgency of trained hands and quiet commands. "Oxygen," one voice says, "monitor his breathing," another follows, and the space fills with the rhythm of action replacing the stillness that came before. Ryan hesitates for only a moment before stepping closer to the open door, his voice low but clear. I am coming with him, and no one argues, because in this moment, roles blur, lines shift, and what matters is no longer rank but presence. Coda moves then, not with force, but with certainty, stepping toward the vehicle as if he already knows where he belongs. For a brief second, a paramedic glances at him, uncertain, but Ryan's hand lifts slightly, a silent request, and the hesitation fades. The dog jumps in, settling near the stretcher, not touching, not interfering, just watching, just staying. The doors close, sealing the space with a final sound that feels like the beginning of something rather than the end. Outside, the remaining officers stand in a silence that is no longer ceremonial, but unsettled, their formation broken, their certainty gone. Inspector Fraser turns slowly, his gaze moving across the faces before him, measuring, calculating, as if seeing them all for the first time. The rain runs down his collar, unnoticed, as a single thought settles into place with quiet clarity. If Ethan Caldwell is alive, then the report was wrong, and if the report was wrong, then someone made it that way. The ambulance pulls away, tires cutting through wet gravel before finding the road, its siren rising again into the gray sky, carrying with it a truth that refuses to stay buried. And back at the cemetery, beneath the open canopy and the unfinished ceremony, the empty coffin remains, its silence now louder than any bark, any command, any word that had been spoken before. The ambulance cuts through the wet streets of Vancouver with a steady urgency, its tires hissing against rain-soaked asphalt, red and white lights reflecting off storefront windows and passing cars in long, distorted streaks, while inside, the world narrows to breath, rhythm, and the fragile line that separates both. Ethan Caldwell lies motionless on the stretcher, his face pale under the soft glow of overhead lights, oxygen flowing through a mask that fogs slightly with each shallow inhale, each exhale, like a signal flickering in and out of reach. The paramedic beside him watches closely, fingers resting lightly against his wrist, counting, measuring, waiting for consistency where there is none yet. Stay with us, she says quietly, not as a command, but as something closer to hope, her voice steady in a space where nothing else feels certain. Ryan Mercer sits near the rear door, one hand braced against the metal frame, the other resting near Coda, who has not taken his eyes off Ethan for a single second. The dog's posture is calm now, but alert, as if the urgency has shifted from warning to watchfulness, from alarm to protection. Every movement inside the ambulance feels deliberate, controlled, yet beneath it runs a tension that no training can fully suppress, because this situation should not exist, not within the rules they have been taught to trust. Outside, the city passes in blurred shapes, traffic lights glowing through the rain, pedestrians pausing on sidewalks, unaware that something impossible is unfolding just meters away. Ryan exhales slowly, his thoughts beginning to form around a single, persistent question that refuses to leave. How does a man declared dead return to breath? He glances at the paramedic, then back to Ethan, then finally to Coda, whose quiet certainty now feels less like instinct and more like knowledge. The siren dips briefly as the vehicle slows for a turn, then rises again, a constant thread pulling them forward through uncertainty. What caused it? Ryan asks, his voice low, careful, as if the answer might shift something fragile. The paramedic does not look up immediately, her focus still on the monitors, on the subtle movements that matter more than speculation. We do not know yet, she replies, measured, honest, but this does not look natural. The words settle heavily in the confined space, not dramatic, not loud, but undeniable. Ryan nods once, his jaw tightening slightly, because that confirms what he has already begun to suspect. This is not just a mistake, this is something placed, something hidden. Coda shifts slightly, leaning closer to the stretcher, his nose lifting as if catching a scent that has not faded, something that lingers beneath antiseptic and rain, something tied to memory, to recognition. His ears twitch once, then settle again, his gaze unwavering. The ambulance slows again, then turns sharply. The hospital entrance coming into view through the rain-streaked windows, bright lights cutting through the gray. Like a promise of clarity, doors open before the vehicle has fully stopped, hands already reaching in, voices coordinating, controlled but urgent. The stretcher is pulled out smoothly, wheels locking into place as it meets the ground, and Ethan is moved quickly toward the sliding glass doors that part without hesitation. Inside, the air changes immediately, warmer, brighter, filled with the quiet hum of machines and distant voices layered over polished floors and sterile walls. Ryan steps out. Just behind, boots hitting the pavement with a soft splash, while Coda follows without hesitation, staying close, always close. The transition from outside to inside feels like crossing a line between worlds, one defined by uncertainty, the other by answers that have yet to be uncovered. As the medical team disappears down the corridor, pushing Ethan deeper into the hospital, Ryan slows for just a second, turning his head slightly as if expecting something to call him back, but nothing does. Only the fading echo of the siren remains, and the weight of a truth that has begun to take shape. Somewhere between the rain and the silence, between the coffin and this moment, something was altered, something was forced into stillness before its time, and now, as Coda walks beside him with quiet certainty, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. Whatever tried to end Ethan Caldwell's story is still out there, unfinished, and no longer hidden. The hospital doors close behind them with a soft seal, shutting out the rain but not the weight that followed it inside, and the corridor stretches ahead in clean lines and muted light, the air carrying the faint scent of antiseptic and something steadier, something controlled. Ethan Caldwell is pushed quickly through double doors marked for critical care, disappearing behind a boundary where only trained hands are allowed to go, and for the first time since the cemetery, Ryan Mercer is forced to stop. He stands just outside, chest rising slowly, eyes fixed on the doors as if he could will them open again, as if watching hard enough might give him answers before they are ready to be spoken. Coda stands beside him, silent, his posture composed but alert, ears angled slightly forward, listening not for sound but for something deeper, something that has not yet settled. Time changes here, it does not move the same way it does outside, it stretches, folds, lingers in the space between footsteps and distant voices. A nurse passes by with quiet efficiency, then another, each one part of a system that runs on precision, not speculation. Ryan runs a hand over his damp hair, the cold from outside still clinging to his skin, and exhales slowly as the questions begin to take clearer shape. The report said cardiac failure, sudden and irreversible, a conclusion signed and filed within hours, but nothing about what he saw matches that certainty. He looks down briefly at Coda, who meets his gaze for a moment, then looks back toward the doors, unwavering, as if reminding him that doubt is not weakness, it is awareness. Footsteps approach from behind, measured, unhurried, and Ryan turns slightly as Detective Maya Loran steps into the corridor, her coat still carrying traces of rain, her presence calm but deliberate. She does not rush, does not speak immediately, her eyes taking in the scene with a quiet sharpness that feels different from the others, less reactive, more observant. "You were there," she says finally, her voice even, not questioning, but confirming. Ryan nods once, his posture straightening slightly out of habit, though this is not a formal exchange. "He was breathing," he replies, the words still unfamiliar, still difficult to reconcile with what was supposed to be true. Maya studies him for a second longer, then shifts her attention briefly to Coda, who watches her without hostility, but without trust either. "And the dog knew," she adds, not as a guess, but as a statement. Ryan glances down again, then back to her. "He did not stop," he says, his voice quieter now. "Not once." Maya nods slowly, as if that detail fits into something already forming in her mind. She steps closer to the doors, her gaze settling there for a moment before she speaks again. "The report was too fast," she says, almost to herself, "too clean." The words hang lightly, but they carry weight, because they point to something beyond error. Ryan feels it settle, that same thought he has been circling now given shape by someone else. This was not just a mistake, this was arranged. A faint sound comes from beyond the doors, not loud, not urgent, but enough to draw their attention, and for a brief moment, everything narrows again to that single point of focus. Coda shifts slightly, stepping forward by half a pace, his body aligning with the direction of the sound, his instincts still guiding him even in a place built on machines and measurements. Maya watches the dog carefully, then looks back at Ryan, her expression steady. "Whatever put him in that coffin," she says quietly, "it did not finish the job." There is no drama in her tone, no need for emphasis, because the truth itself is already heavy enough. Ryan nods slowly, the weight of it settling deeper now. No longer just suspicion, but the beginning of something else. Something that will not be ignored. The corridor remains calm, controlled, but beneath it, something has shifted, something unseen but undeniable, like the first crack beneath a frozen surface, and as the doors remain closed, holding their answers just out of reach, one thing becomes clear in the quiet space between them: this is no longer about survival alone, it is about uncovering why Ethan Caldwell was meant to disappear, and who made sure no one would question it. Time does not pass in the hospital the way it should. It lingers in the quiet hum of fluorescent lights and the distant rhythm of footsteps that echo and fade, and Ryan Mercer feels every second stretch as he stands beside Detective Maya Loran, both of them watching the closed doors as if the truth itself is waiting just beyond them. Coda remains still, but not idle, his head slightly lowered, ears shifting with each faint sound from inside, his focus unwavering in a way that feels less like instinct and more like duty. Somewhere down the corridor, a monitor beeps steadily, not urgent, not alarming, but present, a quiet reminder that life is being measured one breath at a time. Maya exhales slowly, her gaze still fixed forward, but her mind already moving elsewhere, connecting fragments that do not yet form a complete picture. "Tell me everything," she says. Her voice calm, measured, as if urgency would only blur what needs to be seen clearly. Ryan nods once, gathering his thoughts, not as a report, but as something more personal now, something that does not fit neatly into procedure. The ceremony had already started. He begins, his voice low, steady. Everything was in place, the report, the confirmation, all of it. It was final. He pauses briefly, glancing down at Coda, then back to Maya, but he would not accept it. Maya listens without interrupting, her posture relaxed but attentive, absorbing every detail not just in words, but in tone, in hesitation, in what is not being said. He did not act like he lost someone, Ryan continues, he acted like something was wrong. The distinction settles between them, subtle but important. Maya nods slightly, as if that aligns with something she already suspected. "Dogs do not question," she says quietly. "They recognize." Ryan exhales, the truth of that statement landing deeper than he expected, because Coda did not hesitate, did not doubt, did not wait for confirmation. He simply knew. A nurse passes by again, offering a brief glance before continuing on, the rhythm of the hospital unchanged, even as something beneath it has shifted. Maya finally looks away from the doors, turning slightly toward Ryan, her expression composed but intent. "Ethan Caldwell was not just any officer," she says, her voice steady. "He was working internal reviews, sensitive ones." Ryan's brow tightens slightly, the pieces beginning to move closer together. "You think this is connected?" he says, not as a question, but as a realization forming. Maya does not answer immediately, her gaze dropping briefly to the floor, then lifting again, sharper now. "I think someone needed him quiet," she replies. The words are simple, but they carry a weight that changes the air between them. Coda shifts again, just a step forward, as if drawn by something unseen, his body aligning once more with the doors, his presence a quiet anchor in a moment that could easily drift into uncertainty. Ryan feels it too, that pull, that sense that whatever is happening inside those walls is only part of the story. The rest is still out there, hidden behind reports, behind signatures, behind people who have not yet been questioned. A faint sound comes again from beyond the doors, slightly stronger this time, followed by the muted movement of staff inside, and both Ryan and Maya straighten slightly, their attention sharpening. For a brief moment, the world narrows again to that single point, that fragile line between what was supposed to be and what is now undeniably real. Maya steps closer to the doors, not crossing the boundary, but close enough to feel the shift in energy, the difference between uncertainty and emergence. "If he wakes," she says quietly, almost to herself, "he becomes more than a survivor." Ryan looks at her, understanding forming before the words are finished. "He becomes evidence." The thought settles, heavy and undeniable, because if Ethan Caldwell speaks, then whatever was hidden begins to surface, and Coda, standing there in silent certainty, seems to already understand what the rest of them are only beginning to realize. This was never just about saving a life. It was about revealing a truth that was never meant to be heard. The corridor feels quieter now, but not calmer, as if something unseen has begun to move beneath the surface, subtle but undeniable, like a current beneath still water. Ryan Mercer shifts his stance slightly, the fatigue in his shoulders beginning to settle in. yet his mind remains alert, circling the same thought over and over, that this was not random, not accidental, not something that simply happened. Beside him, Kota remains fixed toward the doors, his breathing slow, controlled, his presence steady in a way that grounds the moment without softening it. Detective Maya Laurent steps away briefly, her footsteps measured against the polished floor as she moves toward a side station, pulling a tablet from her coat pocket, her fingers moving with quiet precision as she brings up files that most would not think to question. Her eyes scan quickly, not searching for noise, but for absence, for the spaces where something should be and is not. The official report appears again on her screen, clean, structured, signed off with confidence, but the timeline catches her attention immediately, the sequence too tight, too efficient, leaving no room for observation, no margin for doubt. She pauses, then scrolls further, her expression tightening slightly as another detail emerges, a toxicology section marked as completed, yet lacking depth, lacking explanation. As if the answer had been decided before the question was fully asked, Maya exhales slowly, not in surprise, but in confirmation. She turns back toward Ryan, her gaze sharper now, more certain. They closed this too fast, she says quietly, holding the tablet just enough for him to see, though the specifics matter less than the pattern. Ryan steps closer, his eyes moving across the screen, his jaw tightening as the implications begin to settle. You think it was altered, he says. Maya meets his gaze, steady, unwavering. I think it was written to end the investigation before it started. The words land with quiet weight, not dramatic, but final in their meaning. Kota shifts again, his head tilting slightly as if reacting not to their conversation, but to something else, something beyond the reach of words. A nurse emerges briefly from the critical care doors, moving quickly down the corridor, and for a moment, all three of them turn, watching, waiting, but the doors close again without explanation, leaving only the echo of movement behind. Ryan runs a hand along the back of his neck, the tension there no longer just physical, but something deeper, something tied to the realization that this is larger than one report, larger than one mistake. Ethan was working internal reviews, he says, more to himself now, connecting what he knows with what he is beginning to understand. Maya nods once, her attention already moving ahead, beyond the present moment. Then we need to know who he was looking at, she replies. The corridor hums softly around them, machines in distant rooms continuing their quiet work, unaware that the truth they are protecting is beginning to unravel. Kota steps forward once more, closer to the doors than before, his body aligning with a renewed sense of focus, as if whatever is happening inside has shifted again. His ears lift, his posture tightening just slightly, not with alarm, but with recognition. Ryan notices immediately, his attention snapping back to the present, to the here and now, where everything still depends on what is happening beyond that barrier. Maya watches the dog closely, her expression thoughtful, calculating. He reacts before we do, she says softly. Ryan nods, his voice low, almost certain now. He already knows something changed. A moment passes, quiet but charged, as all three of them stand at the edge of something that has not yet been fully revealed. Then, from beyond the doors, a new sound emerges, clearer this time, not just movement, but voices, controlled but urgent, layered with purpose. The shift is immediate, unmistakable, and Kota steps forward again, closer than before, his body leaning slightly toward the sound, his focus absolute. Ryan feels it too, that pull, that sense that the next moment will not be like the ones before it. Maya takes a step forward as well, her posture sharpening, her mind already preparing for what comes next. Because whatever is happening inside that room is no longer just about keeping Ethan Caldwell alive, it is about what he might say when he finally opens his eyes, and who will be ready when he does. The shift happens all at once, though no one can point to the exact second it begins, because it starts as something subtle, a change in tone, a difference in the rhythm behind the closed doors, where voices become more focused, more deliberate, and the quiet hum of machines carries a new urgency that does not belong to routine care. Ryan Mercer straightens instinctively, his attention locking onto the sound, every sense narrowing toward the unseen space beyond, while beside him, Kota's posture sharpens, his body aligning forward with quiet intensity, ears lifted, eyes fixed, as if the moment he has been waiting for is finally arriving. Detective Maya Laurent steps closer as well, her movements controlled but purposeful, her gaze steady on the doors, her mind already anticipating what comes next. The corridor seems to hold its breath. The ambient noise fading into the background as anticipation takes its place, thick and undeniable. Then the doors open, not wide, not dramatic, but enough. A doctor steps out, mask lowered, eyes focused, scanning quickly until they settle on Ryan and Maya, recognizing in them the urgency that matches what is happening inside. He is stabilizing, the doctor says, voice calm but carrying the weight of something more, and he is responding. The words land with quiet force, shifting everything again, because responding means awareness, and awareness means memory. Ryan exhales, a breath he did not realize he was holding, his shoulders lowering slightly as relief mixes with something sharper, something more complex. Coda steps forward immediately, closing the distance by a small but deliberate pace, his body no longer tense with uncertainty, but alert with recognition, as if the presence he has been tracking is now stronger, closer, real. Maya nods once, her expression composed, but her eyes narrowing slightly as she processes the implication beneath the doctor's words. Is he conscious? She asks, her tone even, direct. The doctor hesitates for a fraction of a second, then answers, not fully, but he is reacting to stimuli, and that is significant, significant. The word lingers, heavy with meaning, because it suggests that whatever tried to silence Ethan Caldwell did not erase him completely. It only delayed what was coming. Ryan glances down at Coda, who now stands almost perfectly still, his focus unwavering, his breathing slow, as if listening to something beyond the reach of human senses. He knew, Ryan murmurs, more to himself than anyone else, the realization settling deeper now. Maya hears it, but does not respond directly, her attention already shifting forward, beyond the immediate moment. We need to secure this, she says quietly, her voice carrying a calm authority that cuts through the uncertainty. If he wakes fully, he becomes a target again. The words are not dramatic, not loud, but they land with clarity, because the logic is unavoidable. Someone believed Ethan was gone, and if that belief changes, then so does everything else. The doctor nods once, understanding without needing further explanation, then steps back through the doors, which close again with a soft seal, leaving the corridor in its suspended state once more. Ryan runs a hand over his face, the weight of the situation settling in layers now, not just relief, but responsibility, the awareness that this moment is only the beginning of something larger. Coda shifts slightly, stepping closer to Ryan's side now, but his gaze never leaves the doors, as if guarding not just a person, but a truth that is still fragile. Maya turns slightly, her eyes scanning the corridor, the exits, the small details others might overlook, her mind already mapping what needs to happen next. No one outside this floor needs to know yet, she says, her tone quiet but firm, not until we understand who signed that report and why. Ryan nods, the plan forming without needing to be spoken further. The air remains still, but beneath it, everything is moving, aligning, preparing, and as Coda stands there, silent and certain, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Ethan Caldwell is no longer just surviving, he is returning, and with him, whatever was meant to stay buried is beginning to rise. The corridor does not change, but everything within it feels different now, as if the air itself has begun to carry weight, not from noise, but from knowledge that is no longer hidden. Ryan Mercer stands with his back lightly against the wall, arms folded but not relaxed, his eyes still fixed on the closed doors while his mind moves ahead, assembling fragments into something sharper, something harder to ignore. Beside him, Coda lowers himself slowly to the floor, not in rest, but in readiness, his head still raised. Eyes steady, every muscle beneath his sleek coat held in quiet control, as if he understands that waiting is now part of the mission. Detective Maya Laurent steps a few paces away, her phone held low in her hand, her voice barely above a whisper as she makes a call that does not sound like routine procedure. I need restricted access logs, she says, calm, precise, last 48 hours, internal only. There is a pause, then a response too faint to hear, and she adds, no alerts, no flags. Just pull it quietly. She ends the call without another word, her expression unchanged, but her focus sharper now, as if the path forward has narrowed into something specific. Ryan watches her for a moment, then speaks, his voice low, careful. You think someone inside signed off on this? Maya looks at him directly, her eyes steady, unflinching. I think someone made sure no one questioned it. The distinction settles again. Subtle but important, because it shifts the idea from error to intent. Koda's ears twitch slightly, his head turning just a fraction toward the far end of the corridor, reacting to footsteps approaching from a distance, measured, deliberate, not hurried. Ryan notices immediately, his attention shifting, his body straightening without conscious thought. A man in a dark coat rounds the corner, his posture formal, his expression controlled, the kind of presence that belongs to someone accustomed to authority. Superintendent Daniel Reeves. He walks with purpose, his gaze moving quickly across the scene before settling on Ryan, then on Maya, and finally on the closed doors. I was informed there has been a development, Reeves says, his tone even, but carrying an undercurrent that suggests more than simple curiosity. Ryan nods once, choosing his words carefully. Yes, sir, Officer Caldwell is alive. The statement lands between them, and for a brief moment, something flickers in Reeves's eyes, too quick to define, but not entirely neutral. That is, unexpected, he replies, the pause before the final word just long enough to be noticed. Maya steps forward slightly, her posture composed, her voice steady. We are securing the situation until we understand what happened. Reeves studies her for a moment, then shifts his attention back to the doors, his hands clasped loosely in front of him. You will keep me informed, he says, not as a request, but as a directive. Maya inclines her head slightly, but does not respond verbally, and the silence that follows is not disrespectful, but measured, as if she is choosing carefully what will and will not be shared. Koda rises slowly to his feet now, his gaze fixed not on the doors, but on Reeves, his posture alert, not aggressive, but attentive in a way that feels deliberate. Ryan glances down at the dog, then back up, a faint tension settling in his chest that he cannot fully explain. Reeves notices the movement, his eyes flicking briefly toward Koda, then away again, as if dismissing it, yet the moment lingers longer than it should. Make sure this does not become public, Reeves adds, his tone quieter now, more controlled, until we have clarity. Maya nods once, but her eyes remain steady, watching him, measuring something beyond the words. Reeves gives a final glance toward the doors, then turns, his footsteps echoing softly as he walks back down the corridor, his figure disappearing around the same corner from which he came. The silence returns, but it is no longer neutral. Ryan exhales slowly, his gaze following the empty space where Reeves stood, then shifting back to Maya. You saw that, he says quietly. Maya does not answer immediately, her eyes still fixed down the corridor, her mind already moving through possibilities. I saw enough, she replies at last. Koda lowers his head slightly, his attention returning to the doors, but the brief shift in his focus has left something behind. Something that does not settle easily, and as the corridor returns to its quiet rhythm, one new question takes shape, sharper than the ones before it. Not just who wanted Ethan Caldwell gone, but who is already trying to control what happens now that he is not. The corridor feels narrower now, not because it has changed, but because the truth inside it is beginning to close in, tightening around every word, every glance, every silence that lingers too long. Ryan Mercer watches the empty corner where Superintendent Reeves disappeared, his thoughts no longer scattered but aligning into something sharper, something that carries weight beyond instinct. Beside him, Koda remains standing, his body still, but not at ease. His gaze fixed forward for a moment longer before slowly returning to the doors, as if recalibrating, as if choosing where his attention is most needed. Detective Maya Laurent does not move immediately, her posture steady, her eyes distant for a brief second as she processes what just passed, not just the words, but the spaces between them, the hesitation, the control. Then her phone vibrates softly in her hand. She glances down, her expression tightening almost imperceptibly as she reads, and without a word, she steps closer to Ryan, turning the screen just enough for him to see. Access logs, timestamps, entries that should not exist. These came in early, she says quietly, her voice low, controlled. Before the official time of death. Ryan leans in slightly, his eyes scanning the lines, the pattern forming quickly, unmistakably. Multiple entries, restricted access, names that do not belong in that sequence. Someone was already in the system, he says, his voice barely above a whisper. Maya nods once, her gaze steady. Someone made sure everything aligned before anyone looked too closely. The implication settles between them, heavy and precise. This was not a reaction, it was preparation. Coda shifts again, his ears lifting sharply this time, his head turning not toward the doors, but down the corridor, the same direction Reeves had gone. His body stiffens, not aggressively, but with focused attention, as if a scent has returned, faint but familiar. Ryan notices immediately, his breath slowing, his eyes following the dog's line of sight. The corridor remains empty, quiet, but the feeling lingers, that something has passed through here recently, something that does not belong. Maya watches Coda closely, her expression sharpening. He remembers, she says softly. Ryan nods, the realization settling deeper. Whatever Coda sensed at the coffin, whatever he followed to the hospital, it has not disappeared. It is still here. A door further down the corridor opens briefly, then closes. A nurse moving quickly between rooms, the normal rhythm of the hospital continuing around them, unaware of the shift unfolding just beneath it. Maya straightens slightly, her focus returning to the present, to the immediate. We need to isolate the timeline, she says, her voice quiet but decisive. Who accessed the report, who approved it, and who had contact with Ethan before he was declared gone. Ryan exhales slowly, nodding once, the task clear, the direction set, but beneath it all, another thought lingers, one that does not fit neatly into procedure. Reeves knew too quickly, he says, his voice low, careful. Maya meets his gaze, her expression unreadable for a moment, then steady. Or he wanted to know what we know. The distinction hangs there, unresolved, but impossible to ignore. Coda takes a step forward again, his attention returning to the doors, his body lowering slightly as he settles back into position, as if guarding something unseen. The corridor hums softly, unchanged on the surface, but beneath it, everything is shifting, aligning, preparing. From behind the doors, a new sound emerges, not urgent, not sharp, but different, a voice, faint, strained, but unmistakably human. Ryan's head turns instantly, his pulse quickening as the meaning settles in before the sound even fully reaches him. Maya steps closer as well, her focus absolute now, her earlier analysis giving way to something immediate, something real. Coda rises again, his body moving without hesitation, drawn toward the sound with quiet certainty. Because this time, there is no ambiguity, no doubt, no question left unanswered. Ethan Caldwell is no longer just responding, he is trying to speak, and whatever truth he carries is no longer buried in reports or hidden behind signatures. It is rising, breath by breath, word by word, into a world that was not prepared to hear it. The sound is faint, but it changes everything, a strained breath forming into something more, something shaped by intention rather than reflex, and Ryan Mercer feels it before he fully hears it, a shift in the air that pulls him forward without thought. The doors slide open again, not wide, but enough, and this time no one waits. Maya Loran steps through first, her movement controlled but immediate, Ryan close behind her, and Coda follows without hesitation, his presence quiet but unwavering. As they enter the room where the boundary between silence and truth has finally begun to break, the lighting inside is softer, focused, machines humming steadily around the bed where Ethan Caldwell lies. His chest rising slightly more consistently now, oxygen mask in place, monitors tracing fragile lines of life across glowing screens. A nurse glances up as they enter, her expression alert but not alarmed, understanding already settling into the room that this moment is no longer routine. Ethan's eyes are not fully open, but they are no longer closed either, lids trembling slightly as if caught between two worlds, his brow tightening just enough to suggest awareness, not complete, not stable, but real. Maya steps closer, her voice calm, grounded. Ethan, can you hear me? The words are simple, but they carry weight, because they are not just a question, they are an invitation, a bridge back to something that was nearly taken from him. For a moment, nothing happens, the machines continue their quiet rhythm, the room holds its breath, and then, slowly, Ethan's fingers move, just a fraction, barely visible, but enough. Ryan exhales sharply, his hand tightening slightly at his side, the confirmation settling into him with a force that is both relief and urgency. Coda steps closer to the bed, not touching, not interfering, but aligning himself near Ethan's side, his head slightly lowered, eyes fixed, as if anchoring him to the present. Ethan's lips part slightly beneath the mask, a faint sound escaping, not yet words, but something shaped by effort, by intent. Maya leans in just enough to hear, her posture steady, her focus absolute. Take your time, she says softly, not rushing, not pushing, because whatever comes next matters too much to force. Another breath, shallow but controlled, and then a whisper, broken, fragmented, but unmistakably deliberate. Log, file, the words are barely there, but they land with precision, cutting through everything else. Maya's eyes sharpen instantly, her mind already moving, connecting, aligning. Which file, Ethan? She asks gently, her tone calm but focused. Ethan's brow tightens again, the effort visible now, the strain of pulling something from the edge of memory into sound. Internal, review. The phrase comes in pieces, each word a step, each breath a cost. Ryan feels it settle, the confirmation of what they already suspected now given voice from the only source that matters. Maya nods slightly, her gaze unwavering. Who, Ethan? The question hangs there, fragile, dangerous, because the answer carries weight far beyond this room. Ethan's breathing falters for a moment, the monitors shifting slightly as his body struggles to maintain the balance between effort and stability. Coda lets out a low, soft sound, not a growl, not a bark, but something grounding, something steady, as if reminding him that he is not alone. Ethan's lips move again, slower this time, the word forming with effort that borders on exhaustion. Reeves. The name is barely audible, but it does not need to be louder. It lands with clarity that echoes beyond the room. Beyond the moment, Maya's expression does not change outwardly. But something sharp settles behind her eyes, something decisive. Ryan feels the weight of it immediately, the shift from suspicion to confirmation, from possibility to truth. The room remains quiet, controlled, but beneath it, everything has changed. Ethan's eyes flutter again, the strain pulling him back toward unconsciousness, his body retreating after giving what it could. Maya straightens slightly, her voice low but firm. That is enough. You are safe. The words are not just reassurance. They are a promise, one that now carries responsibility. Coda remains at the bedside, still and watchful, his presence unbroken, as if guarding not just the man, but the truth he has just spoken. And as the machines continue their steady rhythm, one reality settles into place with undeniable weight. The danger was never outside this system, it was inside it, wearing authority, writing reports, and waiting for silence. But silence has been broken now, and it cannot be restored. The room does not react with shock, it absorbs the name in silence, the kind of silence that does not deny what was said but understands immediately what it means. Ryan Mercer feels it settle into his chest like cold air, sharp and undeniable, while beside him, Detective Maya Laurent does not move, her expression steady, her mind already shifting from listening to action. Superintendent Daniel Reeves. The name does not echo. It anchors. Maya turns slightly toward the nurse, her voice calm. Controlled. No one enters this room without clearance from me, and there is something in her tone that leaves no room for hesitation. The nurse nods quickly, understanding the shift, stepping back toward the station with quiet urgency. Ethan's breathing begins to even out again, the strain of speaking fading into the steady rhythm of recovery, his body retreating from effort, but the damage, whatever was intended, has not taken what mattered most. Coda remains at the bedside, unmoving, his presence constant, his gaze still fixed on Ethan as if guarding the fragile space between breath and silence. Ryan steps closer to Maya, his voice low, careful. If Reeves is involved. But he does not finish the sentence, because the rest does not need to be spoken. Maya nods once, her eyes still on Ethan for a brief moment before shifting to Ryan, sharper now, more focused. Then we are already late. She replies quietly, the weight of that truth settles immediately. This is no longer an investigation that can move slowly, carefully, by the book. This is something that must move ahead of whoever is trying to stay in control. Maya reaches into her coat, pulling out her phone again, her fingers moving with precision, selecting contacts that do not appear in standard directories. I need an internal integrity team, she says into the line, her voice steady but urgent, restricted. Off record. Now, there is a pause, then a response, and she adds, no digital trace. We do this quietly. She ends the call and turns back to Ryan, her posture aligned, her direction clear. We isolate him, she says, nodding slightly toward Ethan, and we isolate the truth before it gets rewritten again. Ryan nods, the clarity of her words cutting through the uncertainty that had been building. Coda shifts slightly, his head lifting just enough to glance toward the door, his ears catching something distant, something subtle, footsteps, measured, controlled, approaching. Ryan notices instantly, his body tightening slightly, his gaze moving toward the entrance. Maya follows a fraction of a second later, her attention sharp, her instincts already ahead of the sound. The handle moves, not abruptly, not forcefully, but deliberately. The door opens just enough for a figure to appear, a uniformed officer, posture formal, expression neutral, but the timing is wrong, too soon, too aligned with what should still be unknown. "I was told there is an update," the officer says, his tone controlled, but his eyes scanning the room with a focus that does not belong to routine inquiry. Maya steps forward immediately, placing herself between the officer and the bed, her voice calm but firm. "There is no update for you." The officer pauses, just a fraction, enough to reveal something beneath the surface, something calculated. Coda stands now, fully, his body aligned with the tension in the room. Not aggressive, but alert, his presence unmistakable. Ryan steps slightly to the side, positioning himself closer to Maya, his posture steady, his attention fixed on the man at the door. The air tightens, not with noise, but with awareness. This is no longer coincidence. The officer nods once, slowly, as if accepting the response, but his eyes linger a second too long, then he steps back. The door closing softly behind him, silence returns, but it is no longer neutral. Maya exhales slowly, her gaze still fixed on the door, her voice low, precise. "They already know something changed." Ryan nods, the reality settling deeper now, unavoidable. The timeline is collapsing, the control slipping, and whoever is behind it is moving to regain it. Coda lowers his head slightly, his attention returning to Ethan, but the brief shift has already revealed what needed to be seen. They are not alone in this. They were never alone, and now, with a name spoken and a system beginning to fracture, the line between protection and exposure has become dangerously thin. The room holds steady, but the illusion of control has already begun to fracture, not in noise, not in chaos, but in the quiet understanding that whatever system once protected order is now being tested from within. Maya Loran does not wait for it to settle. She moves, deliberate and precise, stepping toward the door and securing it with a subtle motion that does not draw attention but ensures it, her hand resting briefly against the handle as if confirming a boundary that now matters more than ever. Ryan Mercer watches her, understanding without needing instruction, his position shifting slightly closer to Ethan's bed, placing himself between the man who survived and whatever might come next. Coda remains at Ethan's side, but his posture has changed again, no longer just watchful, now protective in a way that feels almost human, his body angled outward, ears alert, eyes tracking every small movement in the room and beyond it. Ethan's breathing remains steady, his body resting after the strain of speaking, but the truth he released still lingers in the air, shaping everything that follows. Maya turns back toward Ryan, her voice low, controlled. "We move him." The words are simple, but the meaning is not. Ryan nods immediately, no hesitation, because staying here is no longer safe. This room, this floor, this hospital. It is all part of the same system that failed him once. Maya reaches for her phone again, her movements efficient, selecting another contact, one that does not pass through standard channels. "I need a secure transfer," she says quietly, unmarked, no registry, immediate. There is a pause, then a response, and she adds, "No one outside the integrity unit is to know." She ends the call and looks back at Ryan, her expression steady. "We have less than 30 minutes, the urgency settles in. Without panic, because panic would only create noise, and noise is exactly what they must avoid." Coda lifts his head slightly, his gaze shifting toward the hallway again, his body tensing just enough to signal that something is approaching. Ryan notices instantly, his attention sharpening, his hand moving instinctively toward the edge of the bed, grounding himself in the moment. Maya turns her head slightly, listening. The faint sound of footsteps returning, more than one this time, slower, coordinated, not random, deliberate. The handle does not move immediately, but the presence is there, just beyond the door, waiting, assessing. The air tightens again, not with fear, but with awareness. Maya steps closer to the bed, lowering her voice. "If they come in, we delay, nothing more." Ryan nods once, his posture steady, his focus absolute. Coda lets out a low, quiet sound, barely audible, but enough to cut through the tension, a reminder that instinct still leads where logic hesitates. The footsteps pause, then continue past, fading down the corridor, leaving behind a silence that is heavier than before. Maya exhales slowly, not in relief, but in confirmation. They are being watched, measured, tracked. Time is no longer something they have in abundance. A nurse enters quietly from a side door, one of Maya's contacts, her expression focused, her movements efficient. Transport is ready, she says softly. Maya nods, stepping aside as the process begins. Equipment is adjusted. Lines secured, movements coordinated with precision and speed that does not draw attention. Ethan is carefully prepared for transfer, his condition stable but fragile, every motion measured to preserve what has been regained. Ryan stays close, his presence steady, his eyes never leaving Ethan, while Coda moves with them, step for step, never breaking formation, never losing focus. The room shifts from stillness to action again, but this time it is controlled from within, not imposed from outside. The stretcher is positioned, the transition begins, and within seconds, the space that once held uncertainty now holds purpose. Maya watches every detail, every movement, her mind already several steps ahead, anticipating what comes next. Because this is no longer about discovering the truth, it is about protecting it long enough for it to be heard. And as Ethan is moved toward the exit, his breathing steady, his presence undeniable, one truth settles quietly beneath everything else. The system that tried to erase him is still active, still watching, but it is no longer unseen, and neither are they. The movement through the corridor is quiet, almost invisible, the kind of motion that does not draw attention because it is designed not to, and yet every step carries the weight of something far greater than urgency. Ethan Caldwell is guided carefully along the polished floor, the stretcher rolling smoothly, the steady rhythm of its wheels blending into the background noise of the hospital as if it belongs there. As if nothing about this moment is out of place, Ryan Mercer walks at his side. One hand resting lightly near the frame, not touching, but close enough to act, his eyes scanning ahead, then back, then ahead again, measuring every shadow, every reflection in the glass panels that line the corridor. Coda moves in perfect alignment beside him, silent, precise, his presence a constant thread that does not break, his gaze shifting between Ethan and the path ahead, as if guarding both the man and the direction they are moving. Maya Loran leads slightly in front, her pace controlled, her attention divided across multiple layers at once, the hallway, the exits, the timing, the unseen variables that cannot be predicted but must be anticipated. The elevator doors open before they reach them, timed perfectly, a small detail that speaks to preparation rather than chance, and without hesitation, they move inside. The space is confined, quiet, the hum of the lift replacing the wider noise of the hospital, and for a brief moment, everything narrows again, just the four of them and the fragile truth they are carrying. Ryan glances at Maya, his voice low, steady. Where are we taking him? She does not look away from the numbers ascending above the door, her answer simple, precise, somewhere they cannot rewrite him. The words settle in a small space, not dramatic, but final, because that is what this has become, not just protection, but preservation of truth. Coda shifts slightly, his head turning toward the elevator doors as they slow, his ears lifting, his body aligning again with that quiet sense of awareness that has guided him from the beginning. The doors open to a lower level, less populated, quieter, the lighting dimmer, the air cooler, and they move again, quickly but without haste, through a service corridor that carries none of the polished certainty of the upper floors. A vehicle waits at the far exit, unmarked, engine running softly, its presence understated but intentional. The transfer happens in seconds, controlled, practiced, the stretcher lifted, secured, doors closing with a soft, final sound that feels like a line being drawn. Maya steps back for just a moment, her eyes scanning the empty stretch behind them, ensuring no movement, no shadow, no interruption. Then she steps forward and closes the last gap, sealing the space. Ryan settles inside, his posture steady, his gaze returning immediately to Ethan, whose breathing remains consistent, his presence no longer fragile in the same way, but still not fully returned. Coda lies down beside the stretcher, his head resting just near Ethan's arm, not touching, but close enough to feel, to sense, to remain connected. The vehicle begins to move, slow at first, then steady, merging into the quiet flow of the city beyond the hospital walls. Outside, the rain has softened, the sky beginning to lighten just slightly, the first hint of morning pressing through the gray, and the world continues as if nothing has changed. But inside the vehicle, everything has. Ryan watches the subtle rise and fall of Ethan's chest, the steady rhythm that once disappeared now present again, undeniable, and he feels something settle that is not relief, not entirely, but something deeper, something closer to understanding. Beside him, Maya remains still, her eyes forward, her mind already moving ahead to what comes next, to the names, the records, the system that must now be faced without illusion. Coda remains where he is, unmoving, unwavering, his presence the quiet constant that never needed proof, never needed confirmation, only trust, and as the vehicle moves further away, carrying them into a space where truth might finally be heard, one quiet realization remains, steady and unspoken. Sometimes justice does not arrive with noise or force. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a single breath that refuses to stop, and a loyal soul that refuses to believe it ever did.